Hello there, this is Joel D. Canfield of Someday Box, and today I'm doing my very first ever author interview with Kerry Dwyer, who just released Ramblings in Ireland, which I think is a lovely, gentle book, and I enjoyed it thoroughly, partly because it's about Ireland, partly because it's about walking, and partly because Kerry has a strange sense of humor, just like me. Hello, Kerry. How are you?
Hi, Joel. I'm very well, thanks. Uh,
Good.
It's raining here in France today, but we need
Well,
the weather.
here in northern Wisconsin, it's not raining, and they wish it was. In a drought, and they really need more rain. Even though we're surrounded by lakes, rivers, and streams, more rain, please. There's rain in your book. I think there's rain here and there in your book, although since it takes place in Ireland, that's not unusual.
No,
Uh,
there's not a lot of rain. We were very lucky with the weather when we were in Ireland. Yeah,
and without the rain, you don't get all that green.
exactly.
So, uh, for those who might not follow you all the way through your entire blog tour about your book, give us the 25 words or less on what on earth is Ramblings in Ireland about, and then we'll wander off on rambling tangents of our own.
So Rumblings in Ireland it's the story of a holiday, a walking holiday in Ireland with a lot of tangents which are rambling in the Freudian sense of the word. 25 words or less.
Marvelous. I never would have believed uh, that you could do it in under 25 words, so I was waiting for the rest. I I write very tangentially. I speak very tangentially myself. So some people may be slightly confused by your style of writing. I found it perfectly natural. You start telling a story about what you're doing and wander off on multiple nested loops. Uh, I enjoyed it thoroughly. And this is actually a memoir. This is not fiction. This is not only the walking trip, but the ramblings you go off on mentally. These are all real things that really happen to you in your life, right?
Yes, they're all real things that happened. Yeah. Um, for example, I mean, I do get lost a lot. I can't read maps. It's very true. So I'm not the best person to lead on an expedition or to give driving directions. So those things were true. The integrating shoes. That's a true, that's a true story. Stories of my childhood. Yeah, they're true stories.
And despite your absolute inability to find your way from A to C by way of B, your husband keeps giving you the map and say, Carrie, why don't you find the way?
Well, yes, he does. He trusts me entirely to navigate always, even in France. And he knows the way in France. He knows where he's going most of the time. But he often asks me to navigate. But then, we have great times when we get lost. And luckily, he has a sense of humor.
We've discovered the same thing on our travels, a year and a half as nomads. Uh, Sue and I always knew where we were going. We had great maps, but then we start talking and going off on tangents of our own, and pretty soon we're wondering, why are we in Omaha when we weren't even heading for Nebraska? So, but we always have fun doing it.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things that I really enjoyed in the book was your multi-leveled relationships with family. I have lots of family and know my family's history back to our early days in England.
Mhm.
And part of the reason you went to Ireland was that I believe that's where your mother is from.
My mother's mother, my maternal grandmother,
Ah,
was
okay.
From Cork in County Cork. Um, but my mother was brought up in England. But we do have family in Cork. Yeah. But we
And
didn't visit that family. But it was nice to just go back and explore the roots. I've been there before to see family, but that wasn't what this visit was about.
And in the book, one of the things that that really struck me, because I've just moved back home to where I came from. We lived here in northern Wisconsin till I was 8 years old, and then I lived most of the rest of my life in Southern California, which is a slightly different culture. And I've just 6 months ago come back home to the woods of northern Wisconsin. And so reading your book about where you were born, but then where you did a lot of your growing up, talk about that a little bit. That shift, not just geographically, but right down to the accent you speak with. Talk a little bit about
Yeah.
where you were
Well,
born and where you ended up.
yeah. Well, I was born in North Yorkshire, so I had a very northern accent. And my parents moved south, home counties, when I was quite small. And children are horrible, really, with accents. And at that time, if you had a north
Let me
accent,
interrupt for just a second. For our poor American viewers,
hmm
what are the home counties? It's not a county called home.
no, sorry. The home counties are the counties surrounding London. So
Okay.
the shires, Hertfordshire, Worcestershire, all those counties that surround London in the south of England are called the
I
home.
love Worcestershire on a burger. So then, from Yorkshire, far north, I know that, to the home counties, very different accent, yes.
A very different accent. And so when I went to school, I was teased tremendously for my accent. And so you pick up accents wherever you go. So I picked up the southern accent, the accent that I probably have now today. And then, of course, when I went back to visit my cousins and family in the north, I was wrong again. So I always had the wrong accent, whoever I was with. So it's a big social separator, for a regional separator and a social separator, because of what people associate with those accents.
That's interesting that I was going to ask. When Americans travel to another country or we hear someone else speaking English with an accent, we love it. A French accent, Irish, English, Scottish. We just think everyone with an accent is smarter than us. And yet your experience, it's possibly true, your experience was that within those close to you, family, school associates, there, the accents got you into trouble. And I know you talked about that a little. Expand on that a little. Why the emotional attachment to accents?
An accent fixes you in your region, and it also fixes you in your social strata. I mean, you must know that within America, how you think about people with maybe a New York accent to people with maybe a Texan accent. It gives you an idea of what you think about that person. And in Britain, people with a northern accent are associated with manual work, with being down in mines, with working in steelworks, whereas people with home counties accents at that time, when I was young, were associated with business types, with more professional people, with being better educated. And not that there was any difference really in the education that you had in the north of the country and the south, but it was just people's perception of accent at that time. And I'm sure it's the same in America, that people will think, if you have this accent, you're going to be this sort of person.
Yes, in this country, many people who come from the South, when they go into any kind of broadcasting or doing public speaking, if you want to be taken seriously as a lawyer, a public speaker, things like that, many of those people were recommended that they coach away their Southern drawl, because if you're from the South, you're not too sharp, ain't the sharpest knife in the drawer. But I think many Americans are getting over that a Southern accent doesn't mean slow. But one difference, I think, is that this country is so enormous that it's not often that a child will be, it's not quite as often that a child will be born in Texas, move to California, and have their Texas accent ridiculed, and then go back home and visit family in Austin real often to have their
Yeah.
California accent ridiculed. So I think your experience is more likely to happen in England than in America, but I think
Yeah.
that clarifies why it would be. Uh, Now you have another accent, and you mentioned, because I'd like to hear you say it, you mentioned in one of your written comments somewhere, what would be the title of your autobiography should you ever write it?
The title of my autobiography would be Autre Direction,
And
Other
in English,
Directions.
other
Other
directions. And
directions. It's what you see on signposts. You know, if you're driving somewhere, you see sort of Paris, Bordeaux, Versailles, Autre Direction, which takes you round to go onto the motorway. And I think that would be my autobiography. I've always gone in follow the Autre Direction because I can't ever see the signpost to exactly where I want to go. So Bébert, he teases me. He says, you know, our village isn't signposted from Paris. You know, we just go to the nearest place. You're not going to see a signpost for where we live in Paris.
in your book, you tell the story of a little time spent on a roundabout because you kept looking for. Now I've forgotten it. Do you remember that story? The roundabout and other directions?
Well, yes, when we were going through Paris, we were traveling. We were coming home from Paris, and we took the ring road, which goes under Paris, and I was navigating, which I usually do, and it goes all the way around a ring road around Paris, and it was after we'd passed the Versailles exit twice that Herbert said, you know, what signpost are you actually following? And I said, well, I'm following Autre Direction until I find the one that points somewhere I know. And he said, well, where do you know? And I said, well, I want Rouen or Saint-Germain, or, you know, somewhere that I know. And he said, it won't be signposted from Paris. You know, you just need to find the nearest A road, and we'll go down the. We just need to go north.
So that would be like me driving around New York looking. I would be looking for the Rice Lake exit in New York.
That's right. Yeah.
Not gonna find it.
No. So really, we needed to go south, not north. North is wrong. South. Yeah.
I think south and north should be used interchangeably. I do it all the time.
Thank you.
So what's next? I know you're working on another book that's about books. So you're doing more nested, tangential, confusing things. A book about books.
It's a book about a book exchange. And here in a lot of places in France, wherever there's a large expat community, we have book exchanges where people who prefer to read in English go to exchange their books, and we go on a monthly basis. And there's a huge stock of books, and you can choose your books, which saves having to order them on the internet. Actually, it's much easier these days to order from anywhere on the internet and get English books here. But it's also a way of meeting people from round and about. So we meet and we have cups of tea and cakes and talk about books we've read. And through that, you read things that you wouldn't normally have picked up because they're not things that you would look for, things that other people have said you might like this. So I've based my next book around a book exchange, and it's the life of a few people who frequent a book exchange, and that's how they're linked, but they all have their own separate lives, and they're expats in France. Which is
and that one will be fiction mostly. Is that right?
That would be mostly fiction, yeah.
Okay.
Based on what I know of the expat community.
Will any of your friends recognize themselves in the book?
They might. Certainly the people that you've already met in Ramblings, such as Antoinette and Nadia, they will recognize themselves, but I have their permission, so that's okay to write about them. Other people, I've changed substantial amounts of detail about them, so they wouldn't recognize themselves. Because and they're doing things they would never do anyway. So it's become totally fiction in some parts. Yeah.
Or so you would have us believe.
Yeah.
I'm willing to believe. So one last thing before we go.
Okay.
How did you end up in France, married to a Frenchman, with your lovely bilingual daughter?
Oh, well, my parents moved to France when they retired. They moved into this region, into Charente-Maritime, because of the climate. It's a microclimate in France. We have more good weather here than the region as a whole. It's not as hot as the far south of France, but it's a lot warmer than England and a lot drier. And as I came to visit them, I loved the area, and I met Bertrand, and that was it. I moved over, and I changed my life, and yeah, and I'm very happy here. I love it.
Good. So you can speak with many different accents and create tangential circles around yourself in your writing, and I really, full disclaimer here, anyone who looks at the book will be able to read in the front that I helped you with it, worked with you on your self-publishing efforts.
Yep.
But I'm not promoting the book because I helped with it. I helped with it because I love it. I read the excerpts you sent me, and I really do love the book. And I think anyone who's looking for something that's about people, something that has a little travel, a little about history, a little about family, a lot of, I like your fairly twisted sense of humor. The things that you find amusing, I certainly found amusing. I thoroughly enjoyed the book, and I plan on reading it again after we've known each other for years and years, and seeing how much of it I can poke fun at.
Thank you. Yeah.
Where can our teeming hordes of viewers go to get your book?
Well, it's for sale on Amazon, and people can visit my website, which is kerrydwyer.com, and they can follow the links from there. And if they have a different sort of e-reader, they can get it on Barnes and Noble or Smashwords, and the hard copies on Amazon as well, and it's available everywhere.
And one note of trivia that I enjoyed: how did you get your book's cover created?
My mother painted it for me. My mother's an artist. She's a Chinese watercolor artist. She has been for many years. She studied under a Chinese watercolor artist in Bristol, and I asked her to paint the Bay of Beira for me for the cover, which she did, and I think it's lovely. A lot of people have said how nice they think it is. Yeah,
I really enjoy it, and as you mentioned when we started the call, that the poppies hanging over your head are also your mother's work.
Yep, these poppies. And my mother's, yeah.
Well,
yes, she's a very good artist.
I think it's nice. I thought it appropriate after reading your book that you could involve a family member in creating the book, because there is, although it's not a book about family, it's unavoidable that the kinds of tangents you go on in your book will end up sometimes at family. It feels perfectly natural to me. Mm-hmm. And I again loved the book. It's a beautiful cover, and thank you for taking a few minutes to chat. I hope people will go to Amazon and get Ramblings in Ireland, or go right to kerrydwyer.com and get it there, and our dear author gets even more of the money. And thank you very much. Let's do this again sometime.
Okay. Yeah, it's been fun.
All right, thank you. Joel D. Canfield, somedaybox.com. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.